the arguments you hear about January 6th is that part of Trump inciting an insurrection was he didn't unilaterally deploy the National Guard once the riot got out of control. Now, this ignores that he suggested having National Guard people there prior to January 6th, but they say, well, once the riot got out of control, he should have immediately unilaterally said it's time to deploy the National Guard. Now, this is bad faith because these are the same people that were freaking out when you had like May 30th, 2020, when there was an attack on the White House by violent lefties that, unlike January 6th, used lethal weapons in the form of Molotov cocktails. If Trump had deployed the National Guard or suggested deploying the National Guard there or in other riots / insurrections that lefties were leading across the country that resulting on lethal weapons attacking police, people dying and things like that, they would have said Trump was a dictator. In fact, they did say that when Tom Cotton wrote an op-ed in the New York Times suggesting a National Guard be deployed to stop some of these riots. The writers at the New York Times threatened to leave until the op-ed was removed. They actually made fun of Trump and said that he needed to be moved to a bunker, and that made him bunker boy because he was a coward because he had to be moved. So look at the discrepancy how they treated these two events. Now, what they also ignore is there are people tasked with defense, like people in the Secret Service or people in other agencies, the National Guard, people in the Army, CIA, etc., that were within the chain of command, that the Capital City Chief Police, Sund, who is tasked with defense, was repeatedly contacting saying, please send the National Guard. And they were delaying to do so in part because they said it would be bad for optics. In other words, their argument is they think that the senators were about to be killed by all of these people that were committing an insurrection, but they didn't want to prevent it because it would have been bad for optics. That's their argument. But still, we're told, ignore all of that. Trump should have overrode all of them and unilaterally decided to deploy the National Guard. After all, he has the authority to do so. So given that, I wanted to go back to an incident that occurred here recently. Remember the Chinese spy balloon? Well, now we're hearing that that spy balloon, even though we were told, oh, it's no big deal, nothing's going on with it, it did actually complete its mission and collected a lot of data. Now, we knew this balloon was there, and that means Joe Biden knew the balloon was there. And yet Joe Biden didn't deploy the military to remove that balloon from the skies before it could complete its mission. Why? He's the chief executive. He's in charge of the military. He had the ability. That could only mean that because he didn't unilaterally declare that he wanted China to complete its mission. Makes sense since his son's making so much money from, and I'm quoting his son now, the spy master of China. Now, I know people that are reasonable like me would have said in the past, well, it's not really Biden's decision to make. People in the military and others would make that decision. But oh no, says the left. Just like Trump should have been the sole arbiter to override everyone and deploy the National Guard because he has authority, that means Biden should have as well. So Biden needs to immediately be removed from office under this logic because he aided and abetted our enemy. Listen to the left. He had the ability to deploy it. He refused to do so, so he wanted it to happen.